A farewell. Mississippi River Valley Megacity. It's been 300 years since WWV wrapped up, ending that whole 33-year nightmare. After the dust settled, the United Americas, from north to south, including Greenland, shook hands with the Eurasian Federation, encompassing all of Europe and Asia, and the Republic of Afrabsorbed somehow absorbed Saudi Arabia and Australia, which collided. They dropped the beef, signed a treaty, and became the Global Alliance. Over 1 billion souls, people, animals, workers were crammed into these megacities, like roaches in a jar. Everything outside the city limits was blasted and poisoned. The geography of the planet itself was a testament to the war's violence. The once familiar coastlines were now grotesque parodies. The collision of continents had sheared off entire subcontinents, creating treacherous, uncharted seaways between the new superstates. The very atmosphere was a chemical battleground, with prevailing winds carrying the ghost of ancient plagues and radiation from the dead zones, areas so saturated with experimental weaponry that not even the most hardened scavenger drones dared to enter. The megacities were not just homes, they were the last functioning organs of a patient on perpetual life support. Out there, the hydrobarriers glowed, keeping what was left of the good land from turning to dust. Big OLE scrubbers hummed, keeping the air breathable. AI ran the whole damn show, micromanaging every little thing you did. This was the Global Alliance's Harmony system, a network of interlinked ACE responsible for everything from stabilizing the hydrobarriers to calculating the exact caloric needs of the population. It was a god of pragmatism, its logic cold and absolute. It didn't punish out of malice, it simply reallocated resources from liabilities to assets. A citizen who repeatedly violated efficiency protocols would find their energy rations slowly diminished, their transit privileges rerouted to slower pods, their existence gently squeezed until they either fell in line or were quietly scrubbed from the active census. They even tried to fake it with hydroponic vertical green walls, like a band-aid on a bullet wound, trying to make the concrete jungle look less like a trap. These bio-walls were engineering marvels, yet everyone saw through the illusion. The plants, a hardy, genetically spliced species of ivy and moss, were a uniform, unearthly shade of green that never changed with any season because there were no seasons. Their leaves were a little too wide, a little too waxy, designed for maximum oxygen output and particulate absorption. At night, they pulsed with a soft, government-mandated bioluminescence, a pale imitation of the moonlight they blocked out. They were a constant, silent reminder that even nature itself had been co-opted and put to work. The whole city vibrated with a constant tech hum, a reminder of how brilliant humanity was. But in reality, privacy was dead. Every thought, every handshake, every damn blink, it was all getting piped through your echo sync, your digital shadow. And you know the Fieldarnos? They're tight, and they're everywhere: senators, engineers, nurses, teachers, even military vets. Their family tree had branched out significantly over the last century, a vibrant tapestry of every shade, from paper sack brown to deep dark skin. Most of them held it down in the Mississippi River Valley Megacity. Their prominence was hard-won. Decades ago, a coalition of families, led by the Fieldarnos shrewd elders, had brokered the critical resource-sharing agreements that allowed the Mississippi Valley archaeology to be completed ahead of schedule, saving millions from the encroaching atmospheric decay. That legacy of foresight and governance was now baked into their name, granting them a level of access and trust that was both a privilege and a heavy burden. They weren't just living in the megacity, they were partially responsible for keeping it standing. Do you think they'll ever really let us turn these things off? Ori Fieldarno, a lanky 11-year-old with an engineer's practical mind, tapped his temple, referring to his own EchoSync band. The band itself was cool and seamless against his skin. He'd once tried to pry it open with a micro-tool, fascinated by its inner workings. He'd only managed to trigger a tamper alert that sent a calming agent into his bloodstream and a stern notification to his mother's pad. He wasn't scared of it, not exactly. To Ori, it was just another piece of poorly designed machinery, an intrusive gadget that he, with his growing knowledge of systems engineering, found deeply flawed. Its existence offended his sense of efficiency. He glanced nervously at his mother, Marie, a senator in the Global Alliance, who sat across from him in the pod, reviewing data on her COMM pad. Marie lowered her pad, her expression weary. The fluorescent glow of the transit pod seemed to accentuate the lines of stress around her eyes. Not while the Alliance deems it essential for global harmony and resource allocation, Ori said. It's the new normal. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. Every unit of energy, every ration of clean water, every movement. It's all accounted for. The EchoSync isn't just a record, it's a constant feedback loop for the central AI. They call it efficiency. We call it a gilded cage. Her voice dropped to a near whisper, almost swallowed by the low hum of the pod. But some cages are better than the alternative, aren't they? She gestured vaguely towards the desolate, filtered landscapes on the public info screens, starkly contrasting the sterile perfection within the city's walls. At least here, we breathe. We eat. We exist. Ouija, always more interested in the immediate gratification of the digital world, perked up, a wide grin splitting his face. He pulled his sleek COMM pad from his pocket, already swiping through filters. Mom, please. We've been packed for days. My new 0G selfie stick is fully charged, and I've got my holographic emitters ready. I'm going to post so much content to the family page, wow. Uncle Bravid is going to love my moonwalk in the observation lounge. He gestured wildly, already picturing his viral posts. Ori rolled his eyes, good-naturedly, at his brother's enthusiasm. Yeah, Mom, he's been buzzing like a Proton driver. Our bags are at the door, waiting for the automated pickup. He shot a teasing grin at Ouija. He thinks he's going to be an orbital influencer. Ouija gasped, feigning offense. Hey! It's a valid career path in the new economy, Ori. Besides, someone's gotta document the Fieldarno legacy in the stars. Marie chuckled softly, a rare, genuine sound that smoothed away some of her weariness. Orbital influencer, hey. Well, just try not to break any Alliance regulations with your content, Ouija. We don't want any flags on our family data profiles. She stood, adjusting her crisp, grey Alliance issue tunic. All right then, let's get going, shall we? Don't want to miss our ride to paradise. She offered them both a reassuring, if slightly strained, smile. This will be good. A real break. She opened the pod door, and the familiar hum of the megacity rushed in, a palpable pressure that reminded them of the life they were about to briefly, gloriously, escape. Departing at Port Terminal Entrance 3B. Out there, beyond the city's oppressive light pollution, the hydro barriers glowed with an eerie, steady pulse, their energy drawn from the planet's scarred core. Even within the city limits, the sky was a muted, perpetually hazy gray, a far cry from the vibrant blue of old Earth. The journey to the port was a vertical one. Their transit pod ascended from the residential mid-levels, climbing the sheer face of the city structure along a magnetic rail. With each 100 floors, the world outside the window changed. The cramped, neon-lit canyons of the lower commercial districts gave way to the broader, park-dotted terraces of the professional strata, and finally to the sleek, spaced-out spires of the upper administrative zones where the air itself felt thinner and the ever-present hum was softened by expensive acoustic dampeners. The Phoenix's dock was located at the city's summit, a launching limb that extended out over the dead landscape below, a gesture of defiance against the ruined Earth. Another pollution warning, Grandpa Ricky. 8-year-old Barry Fieldarno tugged on the sleeve of her great-grandfather, her brow furrowed as she pointed to a flickering alert on the transparent wall screen of their transit pod. The air in the pod, usually so clean, carried a faint metallic tang. Ricky, his ancient eyes twinkling despite the grim news, patted her hand. Just the usual, sweet pea. The scrubbers are working overtime today. It just means the wind's blowing the wrong way from the old rust belt. He sighed, the sound lost in the constant, low thrum of the city's machinery. Reminds me of the stories my grandma used to tell about in the skies you could see stars in, not just the glow from the upper districts. He leaned closer to her, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. She said on a clear night, you could see a dusty white river of light right across the blackness. The Milky Way, she called it. Said it was made of more stars than you could count in a lifetime. He glanced at the sterile, glowing ceiling of the pod. Now all we get is the Alliance's light. Safe, filtered, and boring. Morgan, Rika's granddaughter, glanced up from her wrist-mounted interface, a faint line etched between her brows. It's a far cry from the old days, Granddad, she said, a dry note in her voice. Do you recall the respiratory index alerts from when I was a child? Those terrifying red flashes on the monitors, warning us to seal the HAB units. She gave a humorless chuckle. At least the AI ensures we don't suffocate. The air might be filtered and refiltered 100 times until it's thin and tastes of nothing, but it's safe. Her gaze drifted to the humming purification vents above them. This is simply our reality now, Barry. Humanity found a way to survive, didn't we? We traded wonder for safety, Rika countered, though not unkindly. We built a perfect, sterile egg. And now we're the chicks trapped inside, wondering what it's like to feel the Sunday. He looked at Morgan's interface, at the complex schematics of water reclamation systems and energy grids. We've gotten very good at maintaining the shell. I just hope we haven't forgotten how to hatch. Bella, Barry's older aunt, barely even glanced up from the bright screen hovering over her own EchoSync bands. She was messing with some slick 3D blueprints, her fingers flying. Without even looking away, she grumbled, "Yet, we adapt by hardwiring every single thought straight into the network. You can't even cook up a secret idea anymore without those ES bands blasting it out to the closest tower." She let out a quick, dry chuckle of disbelief. "The last secret I had was what I was getting your mother for her birthday 5 years ago," she said to Barry. "Bought the components from 5 different districts, paid offline with old credit chits I'd saved." The UCN still flagged the unusual purchasing pattern and sent a "congratulations on your purchase" alert to her pad a week before the party. The system just hates a vacuum. It has to fill every silent space with data. She finally looked up, her eyes sharp. "A mind needs silent spaces, Barry. That's where the good ideas grow." The A.I.S were running the whole show, from making sure the food was coming up right and getting to everybody, to scrubbing the air so you could breathe. They even cooked up special mixed-breed seeds for the hydroponic plant walls, miles of them creeping up the side of the high-rises, looking all lush and green, but that didn't hide the fact that this was still a concrete jungle. It was a quick fix to a big problem, trying to make the neighborhood look like paradise. But privacy was gone. Every idea, every handshake, every single blink, all that was getting streamed right through your EchoSync bands, ESB, your digital ghost. You just can't shake it off, no matter what. Reword this under her stuff. "Did you remember Aunt Kaise's anti-gravity compression socks?" called out Artemis Fieldarno, a gruff but caring former military medic, checking a packing list on his wrist-mounted screen. He was supervising the last-minute luggage transfers to the orbital shuttle bay. "Yes, they're here. Got 'em, Dad." "And Uncle Joe's special probiotic nutrient paste," shouted back Akara, his daughter, a quick-witted nurse who could charm information out of even the most tight-lipped Alliance bureaucrats. She adjusted her glasses, a slight smile playing on her lips. He'd never survive a week without that stuff, especially not on a space cruise. The final approach to the launch terminal was a spectacle of organized chaos. The sheer scale of the operation was breathtaking. The terminal was a vast, multi-leveled atrium, its ceiling a dizzying height above, open to the shielded sky. Dozens of transit pods like their own were docking and disgorging passengers along curved platforms. The air was filled with the low whoosh of arriving and departing pods, the cheerful, pre-recorded announcements, and the excited, echoing chatter of hundreds of people. The scent was a unique blend of ozone from the maglev systems, the sterile, filtered air, and the faint, sweet aroma from the ornamental fragrance dispensers. You could always count on Kaisi Fieldarno to be the first one there. Right on her heels were the twins, Keith and Corey, their wives, and their kids, a bustling mini crowd. "Hi there, Applehead!" Ricka's voice boomed, a teasing grin plastered across his face as he and his entire immediate family came through the port. "Brother, am I glad to see you!" Kaisi shrieked, her eyes wide as she pointed past him. "Look at it! The majestic Starship Phoenix!" She didn't even finish before she dragged him away from the window, just like their own little kids would do. And there it was. Through the colossal, reinforced quartz glass of the viewing wall, the majestic Starship Phoenix dominated the view. It wasn't merely docked, it was cradled by the city's uppermost spire, a leviathan of polished silver and obsidian alloy. Its hull was a seamless tapestry of running lights and sensor arrays, shimmering like a captured constellation. It was both impossibly large and elegantly sculpted, its form suggesting both immense power and graceful speed. It was the pinnacle of human engineering, a promise of escape not just from the city, but from the very concept of a cage. Soon, more cousins linked up, their greetings a cheerful cacophony. Siblings, who hadn't seen each other for far too long, wrapped each other in tight, excited hugs. The adults mingled, their laughter filling the space, while the children, wide-eyed with wonder, pressed their faces against the reinforced windows, their tiny hands leaving smudges as they gasped at the sheer, overwhelming scale of the Phoenix. Finally, Jerry arrived, his two wives, Sally and Marcia, by his side. Every couple of years, it's time to throw a family reunion. This year, they went all out, a 7-day run on the majestic Starship Phoenix. On July 23, 2282, at 9:30 a.m., 227 Fieldarnos rolled up to the Phoenix's dock, ready for a reunion that was way beyond some regular resort they were going space cruise partying. For a moment, the oppressive weight of the echo sync bands, the constant surveillance, and the sterile air was forgotten. They were just a family, a sprawling, chaotic, and vibrant clan, united by blood and a shared, desperate hope for a taste of freedom. They were stepping from their gilded cage into the belly of a mechanical bird, ready to fly, if only for a week, into the silent, star-dusted void that their ancestors had once called home. A cataclysmic farewell. July 23, 2282, 9:30 a.m. aboard the majestic Starship Phoenix. The majestic Starship Phoenix was an interstellar sanctuary for 300 guests, blending luxury and innovation. Suites ranged from panoramic view lofts to anti-gravity havens, with smart AI, custom holograms, and hydroponic plants crafting private retreats. The Grand Owner's suite stood apart with its own observatory and unmatched opulence. Dining venues spanned a gravity-flexible Grand Hall, the farm-to-table Stellar Bistro, and the experimental Zero-G Gastronomy Lounge, with guests witnessing cultivation in onboard farms. Exploration thrived in the Astrodome, holodecks, and Zero-G play zones, while the Aquatic Center featured gravity-free pools and glowing lagoons. Guests unwound in Zen gardens, art galleries, or took in live performances. Youth zones offered tailored adventures, while wellness seekers found balance in the Grav Gym and Celestial Spa. Service included private butlers, full medical care, and luxury retail. Even the 10 escape pods offered comfort, safety, and starlit views. Phoenix wasn't just a starship, it was interstellar elegance redefined. Centered on the platform stood Captain Marcus Hayes, a figure of calm authority, with his 4 co-captains arrayed stoically behind him. 10 shipmates, their uniforms crisp and purposeful, stood at attention on the floor below. As the excited chatter of the Fieldarno family died down and they came to a halt, Captain Hayes' voice, deep and resonant, filled the space. "Welcome, Fieldarno family. I am your captain, Marcus Hayes. It is my distinct honor to escort you on this 7-day orbital journey around Earth's atmosphere. Please be assured that all your luggage has already been securely placed in your designated living areas. He gestured to the co-captains behind him. With me are my 4 co-captains, Matthew Bacon, Travis McBay, Hilton Gray, and Timothy Hackworth. And here, his hand swept to the crewmen below, are the 10 dedicated members of our crew who will be managing the ship to ensure your comfort and enjoyment. A brief, almost imperceptible pause. We will be launching at approximately 10:15 a.m. Each of your personal EchoSync bands will now guide you to your designated launch pod. Thank you all for choosing the Majestic Starship Phoenix for this momentous journey. The very instant Captain Hayes' final words faded, the Fieldarno family's personal EchoSync bands, ESB, simultaneously activated, a soft chime accompanying their polite instructions. Please proceed to your designated pod for takeoff. A ripple of excited tension moved through the group. Cousins clapped each other's backs, siblings exchanged meaningful glances, and even the normally stoic elders allowed themselves rare, quiet smiles. With growing anticipation, the family surged forward toward the sleek individual pods, their movement like a tide drawn by destiny. Climbing into the surprisingly spacious seats, each pod responded with a gentle hum. The AI systems engaged, securing both passengers and their belongings with smooth, reassuring precision. Despite the looming launch, a soft murmur filled the cabin, snippets of awe, hopeful whispers, and shared exhilaration. Over the comms, Captain Hayes' voice returned, now sharpened with a mission-driven focus. Launch sequence initiated. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And with that final word, the Majestic Starship Phoenix began its ascent, carrying dreams and souls toward the edge of the heavens. A profound shudder ran through the entire vessel, a deep rumble that vibrated through their very bones. Then, with an unimaginable surge of power, it was as if they were no longer simply sitting, but being hurled, effortlessly and irrevocably, through the smoggy sky. The Majestic Starship Phoenix tore through Earth's atmosphere, carrying the Fieldarno family towards a new, uncertain future, a truly life-changing event unfolding with every accelerating second. Strapped tightly into their seats, every Fieldarno eye was glued to the many viewports. They watched, transfixed, as the massive landscapes below became smaller and smaller, receding with alarming speed. Unknown to them, the Earth was a ticking time bomb. Below, they began to see colossal clouds of smoke, punctuated by angry, red-orange flames. Deep, concussive booms resonated even through the thick hull. They felt a slight, unsettling turbulence, the first tremor of the cataclysm they were escaping. Panic and raw terror began to etch themselves onto every face. As their vessel, the Majestic Starship Phoenix, gracefully pierced the Earth's upper atmosphere, the planet below simultaneously plunged into chaos. On the bridge, Captain Marcus Hayes and his 4 co-captains frantically worked the comms, their desperate calls echoing into the vast silence of space. No replies. Not a single beacon of hope from any other vessel. Now truly in space, the family was finally allowed to move freely aboard the ship. Most gathered at the grand lobby windows, their gazes fixed on their dying home. Over the comms, Captain Hayes' voice, strained but resolute, cut through the growing unease. The Earth is falling. Massive earthquakes have ripped across the United Americas, the Eurasian Federation, and the Republic of Africa. Simultaneously, 3 of the world's largest volcanoes have erupted, a terrifying chorus of destruction. Other vessels, desperate specks of light, were seen fleeing the inferno, but one by one, they were consumed by the rapidly expanding fallout. The vibrant blues and greens of their home world quickly transformed into a swirling canvas of ash, fire, and suffocating darkness. Returning home was no longer an option. As the Phoenix completed its ascent, its 10-member command crew pressed against the observation windows and monitors, their faces illuminated by a macabre, flickering light from below. Earth, their home, didn't just explode, it imploded first, then erupted outward, a violent symphony of destruction that left them stunned and adrift in a sudden, terrifying void. "Still can't believe it," Harry murmured, his voice raw with disbelief. That was home. Just gone." The sky turned blood red, Drenba whispered, her gaze still fixed on the fading inferno, a haunted look in her eyes. "I saw it. The kids, they won't even remember the real blue." Ricky, ever the pragmatist, interjected, his voice firm, "We can't dwell on it. We have to teach them what's out here now. Keep them focused on what's next, not what we lost." As the fiery remnant of Earth dwindled from view, Lekaneth spoke quietly with the captain, then broadcast a ship-wide announcement, "Everyone, please gather in the Chow Hall for an emergency meeting. This concerns the rest of our lives. A new beginning, under new laws, new realities." The Chow Hall buzzed with deafening, panicked chatter, the air thick with fear. Every captain, crew member, and Fieldarno family member was present, their faces pale under the ship's cool, artificial lights. Captain Hayes, standing at the central podium, raised a hand, his expression grim, waiting for the noise to subside. When a fragile quiet finally descended, his voice, usually so steady, was heavy with regret. "I am truly sorry to say this," he began, his gaze sweeping across the anxious faces, "but we do not know when or if we will be able to return to Earth." On the massive holographic displays that now banded the Chow Hall walls, real-time data flickered into terrifying visuals. "Our systems are showing you what's currently happening. Nearly every city has collapsed from earthquakes, or burned from the sheer force of magma from volcanic eruptions, or been swallowed by massive ocean waves. For now, I believe we must continue on our current course until further notice." His voice cracked slightly. "But first, we haven't made any contact with survivors. Not a single distress signal has broken through the static. So, let us take a moment of silence for all those we've lost." A profound, heavy silence fell, broken only by the hum of the ship's life support and the occasional stifled sob. Across the room, at the head table closest to the captains, sat the elders Ricky, Harry, Drenda, Kaisi, Lekaneth, and Earl, all siblings. Drenba finally broke the stillness, her voice trembling with raw grief and indignation. "How are we to enjoy ourselves when the Earth is in such a state?" She gestured wildly at the silent screens. "This topic must be discussed now." From across the hall, James Jr., a younger cousin known for his impulsiveness, interjected loudly, "Captain, I believe this meeting should be for adults. Look at their faces, they're devastated." Co-captain Travis McBay nodded in agreement, a muscle twitching in his jaw. Lekaneth, the oldest and most stoic of the elders, his voice somber but infused with an unyielding resolve, cut through the rising tension. "He's right, James. And the painful truth is this, everyone, Earth is no longer an option for return. Not for any of us." He swept his gaze across the faces of his family and the crew, emphasizing the finality of his words. The new order. Following this stark pronouncement, the discussion shifted to the daunting, immediate tasks ahead. Captain Hayes, with Lekaneth's quiet support, moved to a central console, a new set of data appearing on the main screen, a manifest of skills. "Our priority," Captain Hayes announced, his voice regaining its command, "is maintaining the Phoenix. Our ship's AI has analyzed everyone's professional backgrounds and certifications. We'll be assigning teams for every critical function, from life support and atmospheric recycling to hull integrity checks and power core regulation." He paused, looking directly at Ricky. "Even those of you who manage planetary conglomerates will find ourselves with new hands-on duties." Ricky scoffed, leaning back in his chair at the elders' table. "Hands-on? Captain, my hands managed billion-credit contracts, not wrench-turning. Surely, there are enough crewmen for that." Lekaneth's gaze sharpened on his brother. "Ricky, there are plenty of us. Every capable body is a resource now. You understand resource allocation, don't you?" Your billion credit contracts aren't worth the nutrient paste we'll be eating if this ship fails. A young woman, one of Kaisi's daughters-in-law, spoke hesitantly from the crowd. What about those of us who don't have technical skills? What can we do? That brings us to the second critical point, Captain Hayes interjected, nodding at the young woman. Survival in the Phoenix demands a new social contract. This ship is now our home, and like any home, it needs rules. Rigorous ones. He looked to his co-captains. Co-captain McBay and I, with input from Lekenneth and the elders, have drafted a preliminary set of ship laws. These aren't suggestions. They are the framework for our continued existence. He gestured, and a stark list appeared on the holographs: mandatory work schedules, rationing protocols, designated quiet hours, strict waste management, disciplinary procedures for non-compliance. Drenba gasped, pointing at the screen. Rationing? But, we have all these amenities. We're in Phoenix, for goodness' sake. There are pools, bars. Luxury is a concept of the past, Drenba, Lekenneth stated, his voice firm, cutting off his sister. Survival is our only currency now. These laws are designed to ensure order and, above all, the survival of every single soul on board, a precious commodity in our new, empty universe. The discussion shifted from the shock of the Earth's end to the immediate, pressing reality of their new lives and the strictures that would now govern them. The implications of this new, stringent code settled heavily in the Chow Hall, a stark realization of what they had truly lost, and what they had to become. 2 years later, the Fieldarno family, a sprawling clan encompassing generations, had adapted to their nomadic existence. They'd learned to farm hydroponically, recycled every last drop of water, and educated their children under the distant glow of unfamiliar stars. Their bond, initially forged through shared heritage, was now tempered by shared survival, yet the grinding reality of their new life was starting to truly weigh on them. The family had carved out a meticulous lifestyle aboard the Majestic Starship Phoenix. Their days weren't marked by sunrises and sunsets, but by the ship's internal clock and the rhythmic hum of life support, a constant reminder of their enclosed, fragile world. Early mornings often saw family members engaged in preventative maintenance, checking atmospheric scrubbers or running diagnostics, a silent, often tense, dance of responsibility passed down through generations. Their entire existence revolved around the ship's operational needs, creating a blend of ancestral traditions and stark necessity. But the close quarters, the ceaseless hum, and the ever-present fear of the void outside began to fray their once unbreakable ties. The new normal was less about adaptation and more about gritted teeth and suppressed irritation. Did you have to use the nutrient paste with the synthetic berry flavor again, Corey? Keith snapped one morning in the communal mess hall, his voice unusually sharp. You know London can't stand it, and it's not like we have options. Corey slammed his empty bowl down, eyes flashing. Oh, forgive me, brother, for not consulting your palate before ensuring our children eat. Perhaps your executive chef role on Earth didn't prepare you for actual scarcity. Their wives, usually a calming presence, exchanged weary glances. Even the children, once so resilient, had begun to pick up on the underlying tension. Little Iris, normally quiet, burst into tears at the raised voices, clinging to Drenba's leg. Later that week, a more serious altercation erupted during hull inspection. Ricky, still struggling with the practical demands of his assigned tasks, had misread a pressure gauge, nearly causing a minor system overload. Harry, ever diligent and now acting as a de facto section lead, exploded. Ricky, this isn't some corporate merger you can bluff your way through. A mistake here could depressurize the whole deck. Do you understand the stakes? Ricky's face flushed. I understand perfectly well, Harry. I also understand that I spent my life building an empire, not calibrating atmospheric sensors. Maybe you should have kept your hands on the controls back on Earth, instead of letting it all burn. The accusation hung heavy in the recycled air, touching on the unspoken grief and blame they all carried. The elders, particularly Lekenneth and Kaisi, often found themselves mediating these increasingly frequent squabbles. Lekenneth would gather the involved parties in a small, soundproofed auxiliary cabin, his voice low and steady. "We are all grieving," he'd often begin, looking from one hardened face to another. "And we are all terrified. This ship is too small for grudges, and the universe out there is far too vast for us to face divided." Their ship laws, initially a distant concept, became a living, breathing, often resented entity. Minor infractions, like leaving a recycling bin unemptied or exceeding water rations by a few drops, were met with formal reprimands and increased work shifts, enforced by the captain's crew with quiet, unyielding authority. The Fieldarnos, who once commanded respect through wealth and lineage, now learned humility under the rigid discipline of survival. They were a family, yes, but now they were also crew, bound by necessity, scarred by loss, and locked in the intimate, unyielding confines of their new, metallic ark. Their minds, once expansive, were now focused solely on the next breath, the next maintenance cycle, the next sunrise that would never come. The initial, blinding shock of loss had long since given way to the monotonous, soul-crushing grind of survival. The limited rations, once an emergency measure, were now just food, a constant, gnawing source of tension that seeped into every conversation, every glance. One sweltering cycle, Iris, Drenba's granddaughter, attempted to sneak an extra algae cake from the stores. Her tiny hand, quick and desperate, snagged the forbidden square, but she was caught by the unblinking, watchful eye of her great-grandmother. "Hey! What are you doing with that?" Drenba's voice was sharp, a drill sergeant's bark, though it was laced with a familiar, bone-deep weariness that suggested this wasn't her first or last battle of the day. "Every gram's accounted for, Iris. You know that." "I'm starving, Granny." Iris protested, clutching the small, green cake as if it were pure gold. Her voice was thin, reedy, reflecting the constant hunger in her small frame. "This isn't enough to keep a kid going." Drenba sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of the entire universe. Her stern gaze softened, a flicker of the old Drenba surfacing. I know, my sweetheart. Believe me, nobody's got enough out here. We've got just enough, and only if we all stick to it. If you break the rules, we all starve. Do you understand me? Your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, everyone." Iris's eyes welled up, tears tracing paths down her dust-smudged cheeks. "I'll return it, Granny. I'm sorry. I just thought no one would notice one." The whispered one was true heartbreak. Such is the nature of life now. Arguments frequently flared, not with the explosive anger of fresh grief, but with the simmering resentment of exhaustion and deprivation. Debates raged over water usage, hygiene versus hydroponics, or erupted into heated shouting matches over priority for limited communal spaces. These conflicts relentlessly tested their once ironclad family bond, forcing the captain and elders to enforce the strict rules with unwavering, often painful, consequences. A day's missed chore meant a docked ration. A public outburst meant solitary confinement in the small, Spartan auxiliary cabin, a chilling reminder of how small their world had become. Yet, they'd brought their sprawling culture with them, adapting old ways to the confines of a metal shell. Mealtimes, for instance, remained sacred communal gatherings, even if the harvest now came from glowing hydroponic trays, and water for drinking was measured with careful precision by automated spigots. Resourcefulness wasn't a choice, it was their creed. Meals were simple, centered around nutrient-rich algae cakes and crisp, lab-grown greens, creatively stretched into satisfying dishes that often drew on forgotten family recipes. Every last drop of water was recycled meticulously through multiple filters, rationed for quick, cold showers, and carefully portioned for drinking. Nothing was wasted, broken parts were scavenged for repairs, and even their clothing was constantly mended and repurposed, telling a silent story of their enduring journey. Engine room education. Roddy finally spoke, her voice a low, gravelly counterpoint to Jerry's. The AI's a tool, kid. A damn good one, mind you, but a tool nonetheless. It breaks, it glitches, it gets overwhelmed. When that happens, you gotta be the mind behind it. This isn't about passing a test for some academic credit, it's about staying alive. It's about every single soul on this vessel reaching their destination. There's no reset button when your life support's failing. She fixed Roger with a stern gaze. Now, check the coolant flow on manifold Delta 7. Don't just read the display. Put your hand on the pipe. Tell me what you hear. Roger, chastened, leaned in, pressing his palm against the cool metal. He closed his eyes, concentrating. After a moment, a faint smile touched his lips. It's a steady burble, like water over river stones, but with a high-pitched whine underneath. Roddy nodded approvingly. Good. That whine. That's what we're listening for. It tells us the pumps are working overtime. Now, what does that indicate, Amba? Amba, usually quiet, surprised them with her quick response. Possible blockage in the heat exchangers, or a faulty sensor misreading the temperature differential, causing the pumps to overcompensate. Jerry beamed. Excellent, Amba. See, Roger? It's not just about the data. It's about the intuition, the practical application. These engines, this ship, it's an extension of us. We speak its language, and it speaks ours. He then turned to Nueto. Nueto, on the topic of communication, remind Mario about the story of the whispering valve and what it taught us about trusting our senses over faulty readings. Nueto began to recount a tale, passed down through generations of Fieldarnos, about a critical valve that looked fine on the diagnostics but was subtly failing, a whisper that only an experienced engineer could discern. As Nueto spoke, Jerry's focus shifted slightly. Ouija, he caught his eye, while Kenyari is holding court, remind me of the old recipe for stellar stew using the hydroponics' new bioluminescent fungi. We need to adapt it for tonight's meal. And Ori, when you're done with your coolant checks, I want you to show Harlan those new grappling techniques you've been practicing in the cargo bay. Confined spaces require creative solutions for everything, even self-defense. The lessons here were fluid, blending formal instruction with the informal wisdom of the ship's elders. It wasn't just about reading gauges and turning wrenches, it was about understanding the holistic ecosystem of their lives aboard the vessel. Later, after their core lessons, they would all be assigned specific maintenance tasks as part of their chores, practical applications of everything they'd just learned, from tightening loose panels to calibrating atmospheric scrubbers. Life on the ship was a constant education, a never-ending dance between survival and ingenuity. Med Bay. The ship's med bay, typically a space of hushed efficiency, now hummed with a low, nervous energy. People were already arriving in a steady stream, their faces varying in age but none appearing older than their late 40s. Some were still rubbing their temples, others simply looking dazed. Artemis, the elder medical officer whose face was lined with years of ship life experience, stood by a diagnostic screen, his brow deeply furrowed. Kennedy, his capable wife and the head nurse, moved with swift purpose between patients, her expression a mix of professional concern and quiet bewilderment. Nurses like Yennefer and Kekia were already busy, taking vitals and listening intently to fragmented, bewildered accounts. Akara, usually the most composed of the junior team, was at another station, but a subtle tremor was beginning to run through her. It's like a wave, isn't it? Kennedy murmured to Artemis, her voice barely a whisper. All at once. And look at the age range, love. Mostly youngsters, some right up to 48, perhaps. We even got a few 10-year-olds complaining of headaches and blurry vision. Artemis rubbed his chin, his gaze sweeping over the influx of patients. Indeed, Kennedy. And nothing's showing up on the basic scans, either. No environmental anomaly registered ship-wide. Yet they all describe something similar. A jolt, a shiver, a blinding headache, this high-pitched ear ringing some are reporting, and the flickering eye color. Yennefer approached then, her datapad clutched in one hand. Sir, Fieldarno's vitals are stable, but he described the ringing in his ears as almost deafening for a second. He's still rubbing his head. Suddenly, a sharp gasp cut through the murmuring. All heads snapped to Akara, who had stumbled back from her console, clutching her temples. Her face had gone ashen, and her breath hitched. Her own eyes, usually a steady hazel, were flickering with an unsettling, kaleidoscopic shift in color. My head, she whispered, her voice strained, it's the ringing. I can't see properly. Kennedy was at her side in an instant, her professionalism overriding her shock. Kakia, Yennefer, help me get her to a bed. Vitals now. Arterial scan, check for cerebral swelling. As they moved to assist Akara, a ripple went through the med bay. Not a new wave of symptoms, but a collective sigh of confusion. Fieldarno, already on a bed, blinked rapidly, his hand dropping from his temple. It's gone, he muttered, sounding more bewildered than relieved. Around the bay, other patients were sitting up, their expressions shifting from distress to puzzlement. The headaches had vanished. The ear ringing ceased. The flickering in their eyes, including Akara's, suddenly stilled, returning to normal. Artemis, who had been kneeling by Akara, watched her eyes return to their usual steady hazel. He slowly rose, his gaze sweeping across the now confused but symptom-free patients. What? Kennedy breathed, her diagnostic tool dropping slightly in her hand. They're just normal again. And it coincided precisely with the memorial cycle chime, Kakia mumbled, more to herself than anyone, as they helped a now clear-eyed Akara sit up. Every single one of them. And now, it's just stopped. Artemis looked out at the rows of patients and then back at Akara, a thoughtful silence settling over him. The quiet curiosity was already beginning to build into something far more significant than a mass case of migraines. That, Kakia, he finally stated, his voice low but firm, is the question, isn't it? Something very peculiar just happened on this ship. And it happened to them. And now, one of us. And then, nothing. The med bay remained quiet for a long moment, filled with the unspoken questions of doctors baffled and patients relieved, yet unnerved. The lingering scent of antiseptic and the hum of diagnostics couldn't quite erase the recent memory of shared, inexplicable distress. What had happened, and why it had chosen precisely that moment, remained a profound, disturbing mystery that Artemis knew would haunt his thoughts for weeks to come. But the ship, immense and unaware, continued its silent journey through the void. A new horizon. A full decade had crawled by since Earth died. The AI scanners finally delivered the electrifying news, a planet, eerily similar to Earth, with a breathable atmosphere. Captain Hayes, you have to see this. Lieutenant Hackworth's voice practically vibrated with awe over the comms. Hayes leaned in, a slow grin spreading across his face. Well, I'll be damned. This is monumental. Get those details to the meeting table, Lieutenant McBay. And alert the elders, we're calling an emergency meeting after the second dinner's over. Through the ship's internal comms, Captain Hayes immediately requested all Corps members for an emergency meeting to kick off right after dinner. The captains, Hayes, Matthew Bacon, Travis McBay, Hilton Gray, Timothy Hackworth, elders, Ricky, Harry, Drenba, Kaisi, Lekenneth, Earl, and Corps leaders, Lee, Bravid Sr., Yennefer, Kakia, Taleb, Jerry, Keith, Artemis, Joe Sr., Andrew, and Fiolana, gathered in the operations meeting room. I've called this meeting with some truly groundbreaking news, Hayes began, his voice barely containing his excitement. Today, just before the dinner rush, our AI system picked up a habitable planet. It's a bit smaller than Earth, but its atmosphere is an exact match, right down to the last molecule. From what we can tell, it's got 2 moons and a single Sunday. We're not close enough for a full life scan yet, but after 10 years of drifting, I believe this is absolutely worth exploring. The leaders' faces were a potent blend of hope and sheer trepidation. The future of humanity, cooped up for so long, suddenly hung by a thread. In the operations command room, the air buzzed with barely contained excitement, tempered by an undercurrent of raw tension. Elder Lekaneth, leaning forward, his gaze intense, cut in, monumental, yes, but it's also a monumental risk. We've been adrift for 10 long years. What are the immediate concerns for our people the moment we arrive? Captain Hayes nodded, acknowledging the elder's crucial point. Precisely why we're here. We'd effectively be an invading force, so we have to proceed with extreme caution. He turned to Hackworth. Drenba, can we detect any life from here? Any signs of intelligent civilization? Lieutenant Hackworth consulted his datapad, a slight frown creasing his brow. Negative. The planet's 2 light years out. Not close enough for detailed life scans or to pick up anything beyond its atmospheric makeup. However, he added, pulling up a projection, a hyperjump timeline would get us there. Matthew Bacon, one of the younger captains, piped up, his voice practically jumping with eagerness. A hyperjump would get us there in just an hour. It's a calculated risk, but it's the only way to get close-range intel fast. Corps Leader Bravid pressed, his gaze sharp and unwavering. And what about technological weapons? We need to know if they can defend themselves. What's the probability of running into hostile forces? Captain Hayes shook his head, a hint of frustration creeping into his voice. Those answers will only come once we've jumped. For now, all we know is the AI's incredible discovery, an exact atmospheric match. We have a visual confirmation of the planet's surface from the long-range scans, but nothing detailed on inhabitants or their capabilities. Take a look at this visual here. He gestured to the central display, a vivid image of a swirling blue-green world. You can all see what we see. Mason pointed out small, irregular dots floating between the 2 moons. Are those meteors? Or satellites like home? The hologram zoomed in as much as possible. From the readings, it seems as if they are meteors, Matthew Bacon commented. It appears they've collected, stagnant on one side of the planet. Once we're in range, we'll have better intel. The image projected a pristine, almost untouched world. Elder Kaisi broke the silence that followed. The implications are clear. From the sounds of this conversation, we should be preparing our families for the hyperjump and for the very real possibility of an attack upon arrival. Our people need to be ready for anything, not just celebration. Corps Leader Keith added, and supplies. We'll need rapid deployment of teams, resources for establishing a foothold, and a contingency for immediate defense. All valid points, Captain Hayes concluded, a decisive edge to his tone. Then it's settled. Rapid response teams are deployed, defensive protocols are activated, and the populace is briefed. A full announcement will follow shortly. Tomorrow morning, we depart for a new world, 2 hours after breakfast. Ready to land and explore. Let's move. Almost immediately, the ship's internal comms systems buzzed to life, pushing the mass announcement about the hyperjump through every personal EchoSync band device on board. Throughout the living quarters and common areas, crew members and colonists began to stir, pulling up the briefing on their screens. A low hum of activity rippled throughout the ship as people started packing essential bags, double-checking their personal gear, and making sure their quarters were secured for the extreme forces of a jump. The next few hours, and especially after breakfast in the morning, would be dedicated to meticulous final preparations and checks before they leaped into a new star. The morning on the Phoenix felt like pure electricity, way livelier than the stale, filtered stuff the ship usually pumped through. Down in the Stellar Bistro, breakfast wasn't just something to eat, it was the very fire in their bellies for the big adventure coming. The air in the bistro was thick with the smell of real, ship-grown coffee and sizzling synth bacon. The family's routine, honed over a decade, was in full swing. Artemis was already doing the rounds, discreetly checking the vitals of the eldest aunts and uncles with his medical scanner, a quiet nod assuring Marie that everyone was physically ready for the strain of a hyper jump. At a corner table, Bella had her COMM pad linked to the ship's engineering feed, her eyes scanning the cascade of green status reports for the MagnaCore plasma drives and atmospheric reprocessors. "All systems are nominal, Harry," she reported, her voice calm and professional. "The hydroponics bay is reporting a 98% yield, we have more than enough nutrient paste and fresh greens banked for the journey ahead." This wasn't just optimism, it was a data-driven assurance from their head of engineering. Folks' voices, even when they were low in that kind of can't believe it still had a sweet ring of pure joy to them. Families clinked their mugs together, passing around grins that just wouldn't quit, stretching from ear to happy ear. "Can you truly believe it, child?" somebody whispered, then a whole choir of "real ground. Lord, real air." Laughter, light and true as sunshine, bubbled up constantly, with a few nervous little giggles from the children, who, bless their hearts, even though they felt how serious it all was, just got caught up in their mamas and daddies' happy fever. All through that ship, a humming energy just pulsed, full of purpose. Engineering teams moved with a joyful kind of quickness, their last-minute checks not feeling like chores at all, but more like a final, thrilling yes, Lord, triumph. Consoles just glowed with green lights, and every all clear was met with a head nod, a quiet little "we did it" triumph. In the hydroponics bay, the assigned family team was performing one final harvest, carefully packing the most durable fruits and vegetables into stasis crates. For the soil samples, one of them explained to a curious child. "If the ground down there is good, we'll need these seeds to get a head start." Their work was methodical and hopeful, a direct link between their old life of managed survival and the promise of true cultivation. The hustle and bustle wasn't just something organized, it was deep with the focused feeling of runners right before a big, long-awaited race. Navigation folks rechecked their numbers with eager, sharp eyes, comms folks leaned in close, listening hard for the final go-ahead, and security teams did their rounds with a determined kind of shine in their gaze. Everywhere you looked, the feelings of the people were a bright, colorful quilt, pure, wide-open joy, fierce willpower, a deep, aching want for something new, and a thrilling, almost sweet fear of that big, wide unknown waiting for them. Then, that news, chimed, came not just through the comms but felt like it vibrated right up from the very floor beneath their feet, sweeping through that packed-in vessel, setting off a deafening, joyful sound that just filled up the air. After all those years locked up tight, that impossible dream of standing on solid ground, of open skies and true, fresh air, Lord, it had finally burst into a bright, shining reality. The Fieldarno family and all the rest of the crew just sprang into that practiced frenzy of theirs, getting ready for that monumental hyperdrive to a brand new atmosphere. The call to pods was a well-rehearsed drill. Family unit leaders Marie, Ricky, Harry, Lekenneth did a quick head count via their ESBs, their interfaces showing a green check mark next to every family member's name. There was no panic, only the efficient movement of a society that had survived by order. They moved towards the glide lifts, the children holding the hands of older cousins, the elders being guided gently but firmly. The decade aboard the Phoenix had forged them into a single organism, and now every part moved in sync towards its new destiny. Putting on their gear with a fresh, deeper purpose, they streamed straight into those designated space pods. Each pod, made for 30 folks, was packed tight with 28 in 5 of them and 29 in the other 3, filling up all 8 of the 10 pods they had. Inside Pod 1, Rika took the pilot's seat, his gnarled hands moving over the controls with a surprising familiarity. His granddaughter, a quick learner named Alara, slid into the co-pilot's seat, her own screen already pulling up atmospheric entry protocols. "Grav couches are active, Grandpa." Dampening field at 100%. Life support is green. This was their way, the old wisdom guiding the young, and the young handling the technology that the old had taught them to build. Anticipation just hung thick in the air, a heady mix of pure exhilaration and a trembling kind of awe. Every single soul, seat belt up tight, just gazed straight ahead, ready to leap right into that incredible unknown. Down in the operation command room, Captain Hayes was locked on the course to that brand new world, a little wave of excitement even crossing his usually steady face. "Captain Brown," he commanded, his voice deep, "start that countdown sequence." And with a powerful surge, that ship shot forward, moving so fast it just went right on past the speed of light. 1 hour later, when they got to that unknown planet's atmosphere. Then, Lord have mercy, the unthinkable. Right in the middle of that hyper jump, as the very threads of space seemed to rip right open around the majestic Starship Phoenix, a deep, guttural shriek tore through the whole vessel. On the bridge, a proximity alarm screamed a millisecond too late. The sensor logs would later show the object wasn't on any chart, it was a piece of primordial rock, rich with a strange mineral signature, that seemed to have been waiting in the void. The magna-core drives, operating at hyperspace frequencies, had no time to adjust. The energy of the jump itself seemed to draw the meteor in like a magnet. It wasn't just a bump, it was a devastating tearing apart. "What in the void was that?" somebody shrieked, but their voice got swallowed up quickly. The ship bucked something fierce, like a giant beast hit by a punch you couldn't see. A blinding flash exploded along the bottom hull, then that sick, tearing sound of reinforced metal just giving way like it was thin paper. In that horrifying instant, that meteor sliced right through the hull, hitting 3 pods dead as they shot past. No. Not those pods. "Oh, crap, no," a raw, desperate cry just ripped through that sudden, awful quiet. In Pod 4, Marie watched her display in horror as the icons for Pods 6, 8, and 9 carrying her sister's family, her eldest son, and dozens of cousins flashed a violent red and then winked out of existence. There was no explosion, just a silent, digital erasure. A collective, suffocating gasp filled her pod, the joy of moments before curdling into a grief so profound it was soundless. There wasn't time for screaming, no moment to understand what was happening. Just a flash of white-hot light, a shockwave that shook teeth in their very sockets, and then, a silence where 3 pods had been. 85 Fieldarno family members, gone in an instant, their lives put out before they could even know what hit them. Alarms shrieked, a wild, piercing wailing that tore right through the pod's thick insides, drowning out even the hard pounding of their own hearts. The ship's AI, Nexus, had no protocol for this. Its voice, usually so calm, was a frantic staccato across all channels. Hull breach on decks 1 and 2. Containment failure. Life support capacity critical. Initiating emergency pod jettison protocol. Abandoned ship. Abandoned ship. The message wasn't a command, it was an obituary for their home. Inside each pod, strapped up tight in their seats, the Fieldarno family got jolted by something fierce. Screens flickered to emergency red, and the outside view just turned into static and sparks. "Mommy! My head hurts," a child's terrified wail cut through all the noise, louder because of that small space. "What's happening? I can't see anything out there," another sobbed, pulling hard against their restraints. The very bones of the main ship groaned, "Lord," like a dying animal under some huge, unseen strain, its agony felt as shaking through its pod's hull. A wave of raw panic just washed over the survivors, a deep, cold dread that grabbed hold of every single heart. But the Fieldarno family, bless their hearts, they'd seen trouble before, so they moved with a grim kind of quickness. Emergency release. Captain's override. Y'all brace for independent launch. A frantic voice blared over the comms, sounding like it was coming straight from the main bridge. "All of you hear that? We're launching," a mama hollered out, pulling her little ones in tight. Hold on, everybody, hold on. With a sudden, sickening lurch, those pods got snatched clean away from the Phoenix's dying grip. Inside each pod, it was chaos, but a boxed-in kind of chaos. Screens flickered, showing a bunch of mess nobody could make sense of, and outside, all you saw was a whirl of light and bits of ship. The designated pilot in each pod, some seasoned explorer like Ricky, or Harry themselves, was wrestling with those controls as their lives depended on it. And they did. Their training just kicked in, instincts sharp like an honed blade from all those biannual drills. In Ricky's pod, he slammed his gloved hand down hard on that manual override. Manual navigation engaged, he roared, his voice cutting clean through the comms system, filling that cramped space. You could hear the strain in it, but it was still pure command. Y'all stay strapped in. We're doing this old school. Somebody, get me a visual on that planet, now. In another pod, La Kenneth, sharp as a tack, was already barking orders. Backy put some juice into thrusters 5 and 7. Artemis, external telemetry. I needed it yesterday. We have to have a stable burn, not a damn roller coaster ride. Across the network, Harry's voice came through, surprisingly calm amidst the storm. All pilots, confirm manual override. Y'all focus on a stable descent, aim for that green biome signature. And for the love of all that's holy, stay clear of those impact zones. Cries of fear mixed right in with desperate shouts of encouragement, as hearts beat a frantic rhythm against ribs. Is it working, Daddy? Are we safe? A little voice whimpered. We're trying, sweetheart, we're trying, a parent mumbled back, their eyes glued tight to those flickering displays. Children, eyes wide with pure terror, clung to their parents, their small bodies shaking like leaves, while older relatives swiftly gathered in groups, their faces set in a grim determination. They moved in that cramped space with a practiced quickness born from all those repeated drills, guiding folks who were dazed or just too scared to move a muscle. Breathe, everybody, just breathe, an elder softly coached in one corner, her voice calm in the storm of those frantic console beeps. The pods jettisoned, hurtling away from the mothership as it disintegrated, consumed by a fiery, cataclysmic explosion, a new star briefly igniting in the blackness before fading into cosmic dust. Pods are clear. We have a full launch. Ricky's voice, strained but firm, crackled over the comms, a thread of life through the sudden void. All right, pod leaders, listen up. We have a debris field from the Phoenix. Activate evasive maneuvers. We aren't out of the woods yet. Inside Pod 3, Artemis gripped his controls, his knuckles white. Heard that, Uncle Ricky? Hold on tight, y'all. He wrestled the joystick, his eyes glued to the external viewports now filled with jagged, incandescent fragments of their former home. A piece of the Phoenix's outer hull, the size of a small house, tumbled directly towards them. Hard to port. Brace for impact, he bellowed. The pod shuddered violently, alarms blared a sharp, new tune, and a spray of sparks flew from a console as they clipped the edge of the debris, but they held. Over in Pod 5, Harry squinted through the shimmering chaos. This isn't a drill. We have meteors mixing with Phoenix shrapnel. Keep those deflectors up. His family members, acting as a makeshift crew, worked in a blur, punching commands. A smaller, faster meteor